Hi, my name's Paul Grogan and welcome to another gaming rules review. In this video I'm going to be telling you what I think about Reavers of Midgard. Well, it's not just me, Victor's going to be telling you what he thinks about it as well. Now, this is published by Grey Fox Games in 2019 and is the second in a trilogy of games. The first one was Champions of Midgard, which came out in 2015, and this is Reavers of Midgard in 2019. Now, people have told me that this is the more Euro of the three games. The third game's not even out yet, but I've been told that Champions of Midgard is a little bit of a hybrid, and this one is definitely more of a Euro game. So for those people who know the games I like, Euro games are my thing, I'm inclined to probably like this one more than the others. Now, thank you very much to all of my Patreon supporters that basically make these videos possible. They voted on this game as one of the ones that I would review in the month of July 2019. So I'm slightly late, I'm doing this at the start of August, but I'm almost there. So yeah, thank you very much to all of my patrons for making this video possible. And if you do enjoy my content, then please consider supporting me over at patreon.com/gaming rules. So, on with the game. Let's give you a bit of an overview of the game first, without diving too much into the rules. The game's played over 6 rounds. In each round, players round the table will take one action, but then the other players can follow that action. There are 6 actions available, which are printed on the game board. You will be recruiting new Reavers, you'll be trading with the villages, you'll be battling at sea, you'll be raiding villages, you'll be raiding the keeps, raiding the keeps, and you will be subduing the territories. They are the 6 different actions in the game, and each one of them will give you different rewards. You will be scoring points during the game for a variety of actions, and at the end of the game there's a huge amount of end game scoring for various cards and tokens that you've collected, and then at the end of the game the player with the most points wins. So, let's start the review by talking about, first of all, the components. Now, overall, the components are pretty good. There's a huge amount of dice in this game. These are probably not all of them, because the cats have sneaked off with a few, and I've found a few around the house. But the dice, they're good, they're chunky, they're all, whatever it's called, but basically it's not printed on, they're actually, I don't know what the word is, not carved out, but there's hollows anyway. They're all fine. They're really good. Sometimes you get it where the paint hasn't gone in so much and it doesn't show completely. That is not the case with these. These are really good quality dice. The rest of the components are good. The card thickness, yeah, okay. I mean, it's not the best, but I think that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. The card thickness is okay. And yeah, all of the cardboard tokens are generally okay. There's a couple of them where the cardboard basically peeled off, and I thought that was going to be a big problem. It turns out that's on like 2 tokens. The rest of them are absolutely fine, so no problems with those really. While we're talking about the components, let's talk about the artwork and the graphic design. Now, the artwork on the cards and on the tiles and everything else I really like. I think it's really good artwork, especially on the sea battle cards. These are really, really nice. The artwork on the board, I'm not too particularly keen on. It's a little bit too colourful for me. I don't know why this area here had to be a bright purple. I guess it's because this is that action area and this is that action area and they wanted to divide them. But for me personally, the board was a little bit too colourful. But other than that, artwork in the game was really good. Now, the rulebook. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go into as much detail as I did in my last review video. Overall, the rulebook was pretty good. We had some minor little quibbles with things or queries. Credit where credit's due. A big shout out to Alex from Grey Fox Games. Alex was there the 2 times that I've played this and was there basically for live support with any rules questions we had. And a lot of the time, things were in the rulebook and it was pretty good. There's a couple of little things like during setup, you basically get 2 Reavers cards, but then it tells you to go ahead to page 7 to tell you what you need to do with them. And that just felt a little bit odd. Maybe those rules should have been part of the game setup and then referred back to later on, rather than having to jump ahead. There was one bit at the end that they are actually going to release some errata or FAQ for, and it's not technically wrong, but in the cleanup phase there are 4 steps, and step 1 says if you're in round 6, proceed to final scoring. So the way that sort of infers is that in round 6 you don't do steps 2, 3 and 4, and you do. Other than that, yeah, as I say, a few little quibbles. What's good is at the back of the book there is this icon reference which tells you what everything is, and every card in the game actually has an explanation on here and here So yeah, it was fairly thorough. I quite liked the rulebook, and as I say, apart from a couple of minor quibbles, we were generally okay to be able to play the game. I did get a little bit confused by the artifact rules, but when I went back and reread them, that seemed okay as well. Just touching back on the graphic design, there was something I forgot. So overall, the graphic design on the board is really good. There's lots of icons, but once you get used to them, like a lot of games, it's fairly intuitive. And yeah, the graphic design, the costs, what things do, that's all pretty clear. One thing that I quite liked, if we look at this tower card here, and a lot of cards like this, there is a vertical line. And this confused us a little bit at first, but it's really simple. What's on the left of the vertical line, you must do, and what's on the right of the vertical line is you may do. And that's it, and it's the same iconography for all of them. So yeah, board, fairly intuitive, the icons on it, fairly good. The only problem I have with it, and this is where the dice, basically, if you look here at these two things, the icon on the dice is a nice detailed chest with lots of, lines and stuff. And the icon on the board is that. It's like they updated the icon on either the board or the dice and forgot to update it on the other one. So seeing what icons you need to perform the actions is really important part of the game. So the icons really should have matched, and they don't match with the icon there and the icon there. So that is a slight problem. Other than that, graphic design, as I say, very clear. One thing I really like about the game is in this area of the board here, you basically put two Reavers cards out. And what they've done is they've laid out these in a cross format so that you can see everything that you need to see, because the abilities of the Reavers are printed at the top and at the bottom. So by putting the cards in a cross like that, you can see what's on both of the cards. Just a really nice touch. So let's move on to things that I like about the game. And I know what you're saying. You're thinking, wait a minute, this game's got loads of these dice. Paul's not going to like this game at all. Well, the dice are used, this is not roll to resolve really. Basically, you roll the dice at various points and you put them on your boat like this, and these icons basically dictate which actions you can choose to do. But there are ways you can mitigate it. There's various powers in the game which allow you to change dice to other faces. So the dice, what's on the dice is effectively kind of a resource that you need to spend to do things. Now, there is dice for combat. And don't worry, again, the game comes with more than 4, but as I say, the cats have probably got a couple of them. But one thing I like about the game is combat is generally optional. So if you look at these Battle at Sea cards, first of all, when you do a Battle at Sea, you have to draw one of these journey cards, which is a little bit random. You could get lucky, you could get a bit unlucky. But once you've done that, you choose which one of these cards you want to encounter. And if we take this one, for example, you either spend a dice with a ship and a dice with a chest, or you have a fight against strength 2. So you do have an option of whether you want to fight it or not. And it's the same with the subdue territories up here. Each one of those territories, you can either subdue them by giving them what they want, or you can have a bit of a fight with them instead. And when you roll the dice for combat, you can spend these favour tokens to re-roll. So that's the only real roll to resolve part of the game, and there is mitigation on that part as well. The Reaver cards, going back to them, I really like the Reaver cards. Every time you get Reaver cards, so let's say I've picked these two up here, you immediately get the dice shown in the top left. So in this case, I get a red and a blue. I'll roll the red and the blue, and I will put them on my player board like so. Then, for each of them, I have 3 choices. I can either basically remove them from the game, well, put them in my glory pile, and get an immediate bonus of what's printed in the top right. In this case, this is a red and yellow dice of my choice. Well, in other words, on a facing of my choosing. So that's one option. You can get rid of the card to get that. Alternatively, you can specialise. And specialising means tucking the card in below your player board on one of these 4 actions. And you can have up to 3 cards in each area. You can specialise up to 3 times in each area. And basically what that means, every time somebody does that action, you get that particular effect. So that's really cool. And the third option is that you can make the card your leader. I have a leader already, so that goes to my glory pile. He's died. And we get a new leader, and the new leader has a special ability that allows me to use blue dice with the Raven on as basically wild cards. So yeah, you have choices. Whenever you take these cards, you have really interesting choices to make. And I'm going to touch on strategy for a minute, because you could specialise, and you could not specialise at all. Or you could choose to specialise. You could go heavy into Battle at Sea, which means every time somebody does a Battle at Sea, including you trigger all of the abilities of all of the cards. Or you might want to spread out the specialisations depending on what to do. So there is choice within the game of what you do. Another thing that I like about the game is, now I've only played this 4-player and 3-player, and there is a 2-player version as well. But in a 4-player game, there are 6 rounds, there are 24 actions, and I think that's important. There needs to be that number of actions for players to be able to accomplish, you know, things that they need to accomplish. So what happens if you're playing with fewer than 4 players, if you're playing with 2 players, each player basically has 2 boats instead of 1. And each player will take 2 actions, so there are still 24 actions. In a 3-player game, what happens is each player only gets 1 boat, but 1 player gets the honour ship, and that moves around the table clockwise at the end of each round. And basically that player will perform 2 actions on every turn. So the tweak to the rules for the player count, I think, is quite clever. Also, with the 4-player version, you use the full board and the full slots. In a 3-player version, there is 1 area that you will not use in each of these areas. And in the 2-player version of the game, you actually flip the board over and there is a different board with less spaces or fewer spaces for things to go there. So I think the game does kind of scale well based on the player count. I've not played it at 2-player myself. I didn't feel the need to after playing it 3 and 4-player, because after reading the rules and realising how it played 3-player, I got a good idea of how it would play 2-player. So yeah, that's good as well. There's little touches in this game that I like, and there's probably too many for me to go into here. These territories here, when you subdue these territories, okay, you flip the tile over and you get the bonus that's printed on the back. You might think, oh, well, that's a bit random, because I don't know what I'm going to get. Well, the game comes with a reference card that basically shows you all of the bonuses that you can get from over there. There's lots of little nice touches in this game. Yeah, lots of things to like about it. It is very much a Euro game. It could be classed as a point salad style game because there are so many different ways that you can get points. Whether the game has any theme or not, I think it probably does. For example, when you're going battling at sea, that requires 4 food because you're going off a long way. When you're raiding the villages, you need chests because you're going to take chests with you to load stuff into to bring back with you. So there is a kind of thematic connection between the way that some of the things work in the game. So for example, you can basically, the farm, you can get some food, or if you want to, you can basically take over the farm, but you will get one of the terror tokens, which are bad and they're negative points at the end of the game. So you can be the bad guy to get some more points, but you will get a penalty. So things kind of work in the game the way that you think they would work, and that for me is what theme is. Now, moving on to the things that I didn't like about the game, and it's not that I really didn't like these. I'm just going to mention them. I'm mentioning them as a negative, but it's not that I didn't really like them. The game has lots of different cards, and it was a bit overwhelming at first. Over here, you have trade with the villages, and that allows you to buy these purple cards, which I think are prophecy cards. Then you've got raiding the village, which are these brown cards, and these work in a little bit of a different way. And then over here, you've got raiding the keeps, and you've got this pile of cards, and these work in a bit of a different way. And there's lots of different piles of cards. And I mentioned endgame scoring earlier on. You are going to be collecting these cards during the game. And a lot of them are just end of game points. And you are going to end up, you're going to need a lot of space in this game. You are going to end up with piles of cards. You're going to have 6 pieces of artwork, 4 suits of armor. The prophecy cards I felt were a little bit weak. These are literally just, it's an end game scoring card. That's all it is. Again, nice artwork and whatever, but thematically, it's just a card that gives you points based on other things that you've done. Now, as a Euro gamer who doesn't really care about theming game, it's a good mechanism and it's needed. You grab the card that's going to get you loads of points, or you grab it early on and it gives you a direction, something for you to aim to. There are also these tokens, and you can collect these tokens for basically performing various things. They're the farm tokens for taking over farms. You can take over towers, you can knock down the walls. And there's a little bit of player interaction in this bit because these tokens, like everything else, will get you points at the end of the game. And there is a little bit of a bonus for who's got the most. So I'm supposed to be talking about negatives. I guess it's a positive, the fact that it isn't just adding up your stuff at the end independently. The tokens does add a little bit of player interaction. Oh, Emily's got 3 of the keep tokens and I haven't got any, and we're nearing the end of the game. There's not much point me getting one to try and compete with her. Whereas if she had 3 and I had 3, I'd be like, oh, I'm definitely going to try and compete. But yeah, again, going back to the negative, and again, it's not really negative, but These tokens, it's just another way of scoring points at the end of the game. So there are so many things that you'll be collecting, and basically most of it just translates to points at the end of the game in a variety of different ways. And finally, the other thing that I don't know whether I'm concerned about it or not, because I enjoyed playing this game. I've only played it twice, but I wouldn't say no to playing it again, is the replayability. Now, I play a lot of games where there is a variable setup or a variable set of cards in use, and then every game will play out different. In this game, this has none of that. None of that at all. As I say, I'm not saying it is a bad thing, I'm just pointing it out. It's the same setup every time you play. Now, the cards are going to come out differently, and you need to react based on what cards are coming out. If you really need a red tapestry to complete your set, then when a red tapestry comes out over here, you're going to have to plan accordingly. Now, going here is 2 food and 2 shields. Are they shields? Yeah, they're shields. So if you don't have 2 food, you need to make sure on your turn you get some food so that if somebody else goes there, you can follow them, but then somebody else might not go there. Anyway, as I say, there's lots of different cards in the game. And yet they will come out in a slightly different order, but it is always the same cards. The end game scoring cards are basically these ones here, the purple ones, the prophecy ones, I think they're called, and you can pick them up. As I say, and I'm only mentioning this because so many games that I've played recently have a big variable setup and a big variable end of game scoring. So you look at the board and you're like, right, this game is going to be different from the last one because of X, Y, and Z. And this game doesn't have that. But as I say, I'm just mentioning it in this section of the bits that Paul doesn't like, which is probably a bit unfair. It's more of an observation. Anyway, that's Reavers of Midgard. I hope you found this useful. If you've got any questions about the game, or if there's something that I haven't covered that you want to ask me about, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And as mentioned at the start, this video is only made possible through my Patreon campaign. So if you do enjoy the content that I make, please consider supporting me over at patreon.com/gaming rules. And until next time, that's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from him. Take care, everyone. Bye now. Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.